in Iran, where that the um, religious groups have taken control over the government in Iran. Now, for many people in Iran at that time, they seem like they are for the government and they like what is going on because they believe in religion and everything with that. Although ever since 1979, we see that the government there is supporting terror organizations that is funded throughout Iran and throughout their sales with other countries. Now, when we see in 2001 and 2002, where Iran is choosing to help much more and help in bigger financial extensions, they choose to help to organizations who just destroy our world. We can see Al Qaeda and Hamas who are destroying the Middle East and destroying like other places in Europe and in the rest of the world. When we look at sanctions, we see that the sanctions are hurting the people. And by that, the world is trying to say to the people of Iran, go out to the streets and tell your government to stop. Tell your government that we are suffering because of your actions. We are suffering and we demand change. Now, many people might think, how would the people don't have any force against this such strong government and a government that is deciding for its own citizens? Well, that's a wrong thought. In 2011, when the Iranian government has decided to close down Telegram, which was like a popular social media there, over 7 million people have gone out to the streets protesting against the government and requesting the government to stop not letting them use social media. So the people there have power and the people there are trying to make a change. The world putting sanctions on Iran is only helping them. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Zaina and Oren, who's going first?
I
Zaina
can
will
go.
go first.
Mhm. Okay, should I start?
Yeah, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. First of all, separating the Iranian government from the Iranian people is only going to show the international community that sanctions are not suitable to make Iran comply in any way, shape, or form. Punishing the government does not mean punishing the people. The government have been oppressing its people, and sanctions are oppressing Iranians even more. Iran's economy was badly affected for several years by sanctions imposed by the international community over the country's nuclear program. Destroying the economy is basically destroying people's lives, even if the harm was temporary, but it will still leave a scar. Um, the President Rouhani managed to get inflation down to 9% in 2017, but the IMF estimated that that it soared to 3.5% in 2018, and projected that it would reach 35.7% in 2019. The World Bank has said that the inflation in Iran has been especially high for food items. Certain food items are 116% more expensive. It's like from 2018 to like 2019. And at the start of 2018, Iran's crude oil production reached 3.8 million barrels per day, according to the data gathered from the secondary sources by the Organization of the Petrol Exporting Countries. The country was exporting only 2.3 million barrels per day, which is like almost 2 million barrels less after the sanctions, or like during the sanctions. Basically, the sanctions are a way to make the Iranian people angrier, not because of their government, but because of the United States, and how it's destroying their lives and basically starving people is going to lead to more anger created. And the Iranian government can actually use that against the international community by forcing their people to face their anger towards a more terrorist way of releasing the anger, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Zaina, your time is up.
I'm done.
Cherner, speaking for.
who said that Iran's, and I quote, Iran's clerical dictatorship.
Can you just start from the beginning because the microphone is off, okay?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, reset.
Okay, I would like to start with a quote from these two foreign policy writers, Mark Dubowitz and Richard Goldberg, who said, and I quote, that Iran's clerical dictatorship cares more about its own survival than the welfare of the people of Iran. And this simply means that the sanctions that are going on right now is totally necessary because Iran is well known for a breach of trust with the international community. This is one reason why these sanctions should not be lifted, because time and time again, there have been a lot of treaties like the IAEA and the NPT that Iran continue to breach. Like the recent report from the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that Iran has exceeded the nuclear uranium limit that was in the treaty of 208 kilograms, and they went as far as 300 kilograms. And this also giving Iran free pass to use their finance in any way they want without giving them sanctions also poses a security risk in not only Iran, but also the surrounding Middle East countries, like for example, Israel and Saudi Arabia, because Iran, as we know, also sponsors terrorist organizations with their funds instead of using it in the economy. They've already set up their mind to bring out the destructions of countries like Israel and attacking Saudi Arabia. So giving Iran a green light to removing these sanctions, they will not use these funds for anything good. I mean, they already took part in the treaty of the NPT. So why they continue to hide their nuclear program if they know that they are using it for good without creating nuclear weapons? They should like allow the inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency to see their program and know what they are going through, what they are doing. But instead, they decide to hide it because they know that they are not doing anything honest. They are creating a nuclear weapon to harm other people.
Okay, thank
So
you.
this is the reason why sanctions are the best way to treat them.
Your time is up. Thank you. Oren, speaking against.
The Iranian people suffered for years from the oppressive Iranian regime. Since sanctions are clearly not the best way to force Iran to comply, a different method is required to stop the cruel regime. Some say that the best way to force the Iranian regime to comply is to impose sanctions on it. We believe that in order to really stop the Iranian regime, measures that will actually help to change the government and will not just affect negatively the citizens must be taken. The sanctions currently led Iran to threaten to close the most important strait in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. They made the oppressed Iranian citizens even more oppressed than they were before and made the Iranian government even angrier. Sanctioning Iran will not make it comply since Iran still owns a lot of money from the period in which sanctions on Iran were lifted by the former president of the United States, Obama. In addition, Iran has previously witnessed nearly half of the country's oil revenue evaporate during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, again during the Asian financial crisis in 1997, and the third time as a result of the European oil embargo on the United States sanctions in 2012. Iran already knows how to get around with sanctions. The Iranian regime does not take care of its citizens, forces them to take place in protests against the US and Israel against their will, kills and imprisons all those who act and protest against the oppressive regime. The only way to force Iran to comply is to take down the Iranian regime by assassinating their high-level people in the government that are responsible for the oppression of their citizens and the threat that Iran causes to the Middle East, and encouraging the citizens themselves, the citizens of Iran, to rise up against the regime and to stop this terrible regime from acting in an oppressive way against them.
Thank you. Okay, that was the final of the opening remarks. The against team, the team that just spoke, would you like to address any questions to the for team?
Yes, I have a question, please.
Just go ahead.
So you both mentioned that people themselves should rise up against the government. But the problem is that sanctioning Iran actually hurts the citizens currently. They will not be able to rise up if you will just sanction the government, since after sanctioning the government that doesn't care at all about its own citizens, the citizens themselves can't afford themselves to buy food. They don't even have their own infrastructure since the government doesn't take care of them because of the sanctions that were put on them. Iranians are weaker than ever before. Sanction Iran just makes them weaker.
Please finish.
What
and
makes you think
address
that?
it as a question?
Yes. So still, what makes you think that actually sanctioning the citizens and makes them weaker will help them rise up against the government?
Yes,
Can
Chairman.
can you please rephrase your question? I didn't quite get it. If you
Okay.
could just repeat it, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
All right, say it in 20 seconds or
What
less
makes you
with a
think
question
that?
mark.
Sure. What makes you think that sanctioning Iran and making the citizens even more oppressed will help them rise up against their government?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but throughout history, one of the main causes of revolution in countries are because of things like poverty or hunger, where the citizens have no access to basic needs that they want. This caused them to rise up against that government. And as you can see, the sanctions are not only placed on the entire country, but some of them have been specific by the US to target the top officials of the Iranian government, like the foreign minister to restrict his travel and business actions, and the supreme leader and the president. These are the sanctions they are putting on them. So if the government continue to disobey the international law without complying, and then the international community keep putting sanctions on them, the people will definitely come against that government, tell them to do whatever they can do to get in good relationship with this international community, because they are the one feeling the threats of these economic sanctions. So if the government cannot deal with their foreign diplomacy, then their people will definitely come against them and force them to do what they want.
Thank you. Your side can now address the question to the against.
I would like to address a question, if that's okay. You said that you support changing the government in Iran with help from the international community. You know, saying that the world will change a government in a different country, there are countless times where that happened. The latest example, 2005 in Lebanon with Syria. This has resulted in mass destruction and thousands upon thousands of people on dying. How could you say that the world needs to help the people change their own government? That should be their own step. That
Yeah. Yes. So can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So I believe that the citizens themselves and the international community should take down the regime, since it currently oppresses its own citizens. The citizens thought that they were oppressed during the 70s when the Iranian Revolution occurred, accurately in 1979, and the citizens actually managed to change the Iranian regime. The problem now is that they're not able to do so, since the Iranian regime is even more oppressive and is even more aggressive against its own citizens than the times where the Shah ruled Iran. So I think that Iranians should rebel against their regime in order to have a normal way of life, and in order to stop the threat that the Iranians are causing to the Middle East and basically to many other countries internationally. For example, the sanctioning that that were put on Iran caused Iran to threaten to close the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran will actually close the Strait of Hormuz, as it is threatening to do due to the sanctions, many countries will be affected negatively by that. Therefore, we should change the Iranian regime.
Okay, and your team can ask a second question.
My team?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, the Iranian government have showed that it did not violate the treaty, which is the NPT. They have proved that it does not, that they are not possessors of any nuclear weapons, and no one has proof of it. They might have it, but basically, no one has proof of it. It will only show the people that the problem is not with the government, because the government is not doing anything against the national law. That will basically lead the people to face their anger towards the international community, because their government is innocent, and everyone is innocent until proven otherwise. How does sanctioning the people and making them feel oppressed is going to make them angrier on and like face their anger towards their government?
Okay, so I will answer this. The Iranian regime is known for violating international law, if it's prisoners' rights, if it's women's rights, and the list goes on. Letting the people know that their government is doing something wrong is one of the first steps in helping the people realize that they need to change their government, and making people realize that their government is against them and they should actually work together against their government and try to change it for their own good. When the world is sanctioning Iran and is not communicating with them and is not communicating with the people, yes, some might say it is against the people, and it kind of is. But when the people are getting hurt, the government is also getting hurt. We cannot not look at it. The middle class in Iran is crashing, and their anger is, many might think it's against the word, but there is a lot of anger against the Iranian government. A month ago, there was a huge protest with close to 100,000 people all over Iran walking together and marching together against the Iranian government. So the people of Iran are angry at everyone. They're not angry only against the word and are for their government. They're very angry at their government, and they are trying to change it. Putting on sanctions is the best way to help the people to change their own government and helping them communicate with the rest of the world.
Thank you, and we'll take the final question. And after that, we're going to go to the judges and the audience for questions. So if the 4 team has a question.
Chano, do you have a question? We
Yeah,
can't hear you.
just a minute. Okay, go ahead now, Cherna. Try it.
Okay, so the opposing team, even though they agree that yes, the government should be removed, and we didn't see any other good way to remove them right now except by sanctioning them, because like, for example, when they shut down the Ukrainian commercial aircraft, they publicly denied that they had anything to do with it. But since the international community investigated and found out that yes, okay, we did it. And you saw how their citizens got mad at them for shooting down a commercial plane. And so my question is that even the Jerusalem Post wrote that the Iran foreign minister claims that they have like 100 billion in strategic reserve. That's what the foreign minister of the Iranian government said. So now if they have all this money, why don't they use it to address this failing economy instead of keeping it a secret and using it for nuclear weapons that's not going to benefit the citizens in any way? Yet still they have the guts to say in public that they have 100 billion plus in reserve. To do what with it if not to address the issues of the people of Iran or the economy? Why do you think that?
Okay, so
Can I answer?
Sure. Okay.
Sorry, just like very fast. Okay, so basically, the ICJ did send an atomic group to go investigate Iranian if the Iranian government possesses nuclear weapons or not. And apparently they didn't get enough evidence. They only figured out that they had atomic energy, not atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, sorry. The second thing, we have actually suggested that the solution would not be sanctions, but it would be encouraging the Iranian people and giving them a sense of security to go speak up against their governments and protest and ask for the right to speak up against what they feel is going very badly in their country. Yeah, basically giving them a sense of security. Also, if you encourage the people in many ways, like for example, funding them, showing them that the international community is in solidarity with the Iranian people, this will also decrease the terrorist attacks and like the terrorist intentions that might be rounding around the Iranian people's minds. It will also make a very to make a peaceful sense in the entire Iranian country. So therefore, sanctions are only going to make the people starve even more. It will the harm that is going to be the aftermath of the sanctions will take a very long time for it to heal. That's why sanctions aren't the best way. Thank you.
I would like to add to what my friend Zaina just said. You said yourself that Iran is currently still, even though after the sanctions, a very rich country. And this is exactly the problem. Sanctioning doesn't make Iran necessarily poorer. Sanction is just giving the Iranians an excuse to oppress the citizens even more. Because Iranians are going like, okay, countries are sanctioning us. Now we have another excuse not to take care of our citizens. And then they are pointing their fingers towards the United States and saying, United States is the reason why we cannot take care of our citizens, while they clearly have enough money to take care of them and invest in the field, invest in their economy, which
thank
they
you,
don't do.
The time is up. We're gonna go now to the judges. If any of the judges would like to ask a question, please just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess this is kind of for both sides. I'm looking again at the initial topic that says that sanctions, yes or no, but that sanctions are the best way to get Iran to comply with non-proliferation. So I guess my question is, I've heard some things from both sides about whether the people are going to rise up against the government, or if the people are unnecessarily suffering, but I guess my question would be, just to bring it back to that initial topic, for the pro team, do you see sanctions actually getting the Iranian government to negotiate or to agree to reduce its weapons program? And for the con team, do you see a better way to get Iran to behave properly in the nuclear sphere, or do you think we should be just approaching it from a totally different angle? So, thanks.
Okay, so the question first for the for side: will these sanctions actually work in achieving the policy goal? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that was the question.
So you have 3 minutes, and then we'll go to the against side.
okay, so I would like to start by saying that it will actually help and be beneficial in a sense that it is because of these sanctions that up till now, Iran is unable to fulfill their nuclear weapon program. Because if not for this sanction by now, Iran have already built a nuclear weapon that's gonna be very disastrous for other countries around them. But because of these sanctions, they are doing everything undercover. They have a limit to their movements and operations with these nuclear energies. So now, even if they wanted to build it, it's going to take them way more time to do so, and it's not going to be as effective as they wanted to be or as fast as they wanted to be. So these sanctions are absolutely necessary, and it's helping.
I would also like to add to what the Turner said. we believe that the sanctions on Iran again will help because the people of Iran, they're not stupid. They are realizing what their government is doing, and they are realizing how their government is violating international law against human rights, and they are protesting against that and saying that the people from inside the country are actually also pressuring the government to maybe negotiate to make their lives easier and not only choose to blame the US, the EU, or the UN working together against Iran. So actually that the Iranian people will choose to pressure their own government to go ahead to talk to make their lives easier, to do anything to help them live a better life.
Okay. And the against side, the question for you was, can you present a better way of achieving the goal of preventing Iran's nuclear aspirations? Do you have a better approach?
To the negotiation table, since Iran is currently angrier than ever before since the sanctions on Iran were got toughened and toughened. We believe that even though a treaty might be, we believe that no proper treaty and no proper way will be able to take place in Iran. It is imprisoning innocent civilians and innocent protesters. And we believe that the only way to save Iran, to save this amazing country, is to change the terrible regime and to bring back the real democracy to Iran that the citizens are craving so much to gain. And we believe that in order to do so, the citizens themselves need to rise up and change it the way they did during the period of the Shah of Iran, because then they managed to do it. We believe that they will be able to do it once again, and now for real.
I want to add something. Can I?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, we should make it the people's thing. It's the Iranian people's responsibility to rise up against their government. And sanctions have showed nothing but angry people, not angry people from their government, but from the international community. And as you said, sanctions have also affected government officials directly. For example, the foreign minister and whatnot. This is also proof that the Iranian government is trying to show people or their people that all of them are facing the exact same problem, and it's oppressive new laws that were forced by the international community. That's why it's gonna show. That's why we should definitely give people a chance to make up their decision, and by giving them a sense of security and and telling them and basically informing them with what their basic human rights are, and making them angry towards their government, not towards the international community.
Thank you. Mike or Risa?
Yeah, I do have a question for the against team. You speak quite a lot again about the citizens need to rise up against the government, but knowing that they put themselves in harm's way should they do so. How do you encourage an uprising within the people in order to make a change?
Okay, so first I would like to tell you a little story about my family. So both of my parents were born in Iran actually, and my mother keeps on telling me stories about the revolution in Iran and the way the streets look like and the way Iranians worked as a team to take down the Shah. Now I keep on getting and watching videos of the same people who took down the Shah in Iran, and they keep on saying how sorry they are for changing it because they understand what a mistake they did taking down the Shah in Iran, because they didn't even realize how amazing life they had as citizens in Iran. I believe that currently the citizens are so oppressed in Iran, and the Iranian regime doesn't take care of them properly. It is imprisoning them, kills them, even rapes them, a lot of them. And I don't think that they have currently anything to lose. And the only thing that they want to do is to take advantage of their national pride, because Iranians, basically like Americans, they have an amazing national pride and they will do anything, I mean, anything to protect their country, their beloved country, and to make it great as it used to be. I believe that through this national pride, through this Iranian pride, the Iranians will be able to unite and to fight against the government through help of the international community.
In continuation to what you've said, though, do you not think that having sanctions in place puts more stress on the government and therefore would actually aid the people? Or is that going in the opposite direction? If people want to make a change and rise up against the government, having sanctions in place, does that not weaken the government? That's my question.
Okay, so sanctioning that are put on Iran does not weaken the government, since the government is very rich through all of the oil that it is currently selling, or at least used to sell. Iran still sits on billions and billions of dollars that it used to make back when sanctions were lifted on Iran and sanctions didn't even put on Iran. So Iran is still a very, very rich country, and it does not invest its money in the citizens. The Iranian leaders keep their money for themselves, and this is exactly the problem. Sanctioning Iran will not make the Iranian government weaker. It will just make the citizens weaker, since it is an excuse for the Iranian government to point the finger towards the international community that sanctions them. So the Iranian regime says, okay, the United States is currently sanctioning us. We cannot take care of our citizens, while they clearly can, since they have a lot of money, since the period they used to trade with the world, and since the period that they were oil rich. And yes.
Thank you.
Wait, can I add something very quickly?
Very quickly, because your team's almost out of time.
Okay, very quickly. So basically, the Shah did actually affect the Iranian people directly in a very negative way. This is why the Islamic Revolution have actually used that soft spot from like that the Iranian people have actually created after the Shah have hurted them directly. And the Islamic Revolution have given the Iranian people a sense of security. That's why Iranians were able to rise up against their Shah, although it was a kind of an oppressive, not totally, but it was somehow oppressive, and it did not give them any right for speech and whatnot. Therefore, they targeted another. This is the approach that we should target.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the judges? Mike?
I do have a question. It can be, I think it's best to hear from both sides. My question is, which of the other sides, so those of you speaking for Yoad and Cherno, which of the arguments that Oren and Zaina have presented is the most compelling for you? And how would you respond in a sentence for each? I'm curious to hear about, from where you sit engaging in the debate, what's the most compelling side that you're now debating against, and how can you respond to that most compelling?
Okay, so I would like to begin, and I would like to point out the fact that they agree that the government needs to be removed, and they agree that the government do have a lot of money in reserve to actually fix the economy, but yet they choose not to do so because of the sanctions. And all this is just an excuse to use not to do anything, because like some European Union countries like the UK and Germany and France, they use a system called the Instex financial mechanism, which is something the EU used to make sure that the sanctions that the US are imposing on Iran is not too much a burden for the civilians. They use this mechanism to bring in humanitarian aid for the civilians. But you know what, the Iranian government still, they block this aid. Why should they block this? Because the US, even though they are putting sanctions on them, they keep bringing in humanitarian aid for the civilians, because their purpose is not to hurt the civilians, but the leaders. And some EU countries bring those aids, but still the government block this aid. So I don't think, because there is a limit to where these civilians can hold their anger. And we all know that they are losing much, much more confidence in the Iranian government. And very soon, because they find out that the government is not honest in their dealings, so very soon you will see them, if these sanctions continue, they will actually rise up against the government because of these sanctions.
Can I also answer? So I do agree that the Iranian government, as Turner said, they have a lot of money. They're the 16th biggest economy in the world. One of the 12 biggest countries who manufacture cars. They have a strong finance ability, but they are choosing not to help their own citizens. And the fact that it is important to change the government, but the how that the world can give is very limited, and the change of the government should come from the inside. I do think that the Iranian government is suffering from the sanctions, the fact that so many countries are choosing to close down their international relations and stop international communication between their own country and with the Iranian government, that Iran is one of the least touristable countries. Like they are making so much, they could be making so much from tourism and they're not able to do so. So the Iranian government is suffering from these kinds of sanctions, and it should be clearer that why they are suffering, and maybe try to make the sanctions much more against the government and less about the people. So if that's possible, I would totally agree with that.
And the question for the other side as well, right?
Yeah, I would love to, if there's time.
Yeah, absolutely. The against side, you can.
Can you please rephrase the? Can you please
Sure.
rephrase the question?
For the against side, what's the most compelling argument that you've heard from your Aden channel, and how would you respond? What's their strongest argument? From where you sit, having done the research, what do you hear them say that makes you think, oh wow, that's actually really on point?
Wait.
So I think that it was the okay, yeah, Zaina,
No, you go.
you can speak, Zaina.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So from where I see it, I understand that the most compelling argument was that actually sanctioning Iran will make the government weaker. I understand that it might make it weaker, but even though it makes it weaker, it doesn't make it weak enough for the Iranian government to fall or to go back to the negotiation table, since it does make it weaker, but it doesn't make it weak enough for the Iranian regime to change the way they treat their citizens, or to actually decide that they want to change the way they react to the international community. That's what I think.
Can I answer? Okay,
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
basically, the Islamic Revolution did actually start in 1978, which is like a very long time ago. And if the Iranian people can actually see what their government is doing for them, and sorry, and how it's actually harming them, they would have risen up against them a very long time ago. Therefore, the only sanctions have been held on Iran for years, and still the Iranian people are slowly feeling less comfortable with their government. Yet it's not as fast as we would actually like for it to be. Therefore, the only way to make the people rise up against their government is by giving them facts, forcing the government by being more transparent. For example, targeting the Iranian press. You can fund the Iranian press groups, and by exposing their government, like how corrupted they are. This will make people more angry with their government, not with the international community. Thank you.
Okay. And do we have another question? Shamin or anyone from the audience? For the
Zaina, is it realistic to ask press to discuss this issue?
For the press,
Press. You just spoke about press, right, Zaina?
Okay, so this is for the against side. So the question is it realistic for members of the press to
get
speak?
involved and the press in
Okay.
Iran?
So Oren and Zaina, is the question clear?
I actually didn't quite hear the question. Can
So
you please repeat it?
the question is it realistic to expect the journalists and the press in Iran to be the ones working towards regime change and changing how government works there, given that they'd be putting their lives on the line?
See, I think that the current press in Iran is being held by the Iranian regime, meaning the Iranian regime is controlling the press. I don't think that the Iranian press will be able to control it and will be able to actually act in order to, make protests and rise the Iranian citizens against the regime. But I do think that Iranians themselves realize and see what is going on in their country, and they know that before the Iranian regime, things were a lot clearer, and the country was a lot more liberal and a lot more free, and way more modern than the way it is today. And I think that with time and with the international community itself intervening in Iran, it will be able to make a change. I don't think that the press in Iran itself will be able to make it change since it is controlled by the Iranian regime. So, yeah.
Can I actually add on what Oren said? Something, if it's possible.
I guess if you want, but Zaina, do you want to add first? Yes. Then yeah, you can address it.
So as Oren said, the publicity and news in Iran are written by the government, and the government are telling the news people what to say, when to say, where to say, and how. There is a very famous story that happened, I think, 2 years ago about a news agent who was forced to leave Iran because there was a death penalty. She was asked to go to court to get the death penalty because she was talking to an Israeli newspaper. She then had to flee Iran and move to Turkey. And after that, she had the ability to come and live in Israel. So the government in Iran is holding captive the news organizations and the news people. So it is really important that the world would be able to help the citizens, but the citizens should be the ones who are spreading the word about how the government is working against their own people, because news organization just can't do it. So it's the people's job. Yeah, that's.
Okay, Cherner, did you want to add something?
yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree with the question that yes, news agencies should be involved, because in any issue in this world right now, news reporting is one of the most critical part to play in this, because if people don't get information of what's going on, though it will be difficult to take the necessary actions required. So like for now, Iran is having a way by controlling the news agencies, which is something that is supposed to be totally independent and not biased. So that's why even if they do the deals that making nuclear weapons or anything against the civilians, that will not be portrayed out. And all this leads to the low confidence of the citizens in the Iranian government. Because if you don't even trust your people to report what's actually happening or to give them freedom to do their independent research and report the truth, this will actually like, you will lose confidence in the international community and the people. So even the people cannot act right now because they only hear what the government tells them. If the government tells them that listen to us, the US and the international community are doing this to hurt you, while in reality they are the one hurting their own people. So this is one good reason why the people need the international community's help, because they are being fed with such of lies from the government, because the government only report what they want for the people to hear.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay,
Zaina, do you want to
question.
add anything?
Oh yeah, one thing. So basically, the funding thing and the encouragement should we can leave the international community out of it. We can also ask the Iranian people that are willing to fight against their own government, like like in the beginning of this what's so-called uprising. Because if you tell the Iranian people, or like if it came from the Iranian people themselves, more locals or like native indigenous people are going to listen if it came from a fellow indigenous person. That's why if you target the news, and if it's going to be even better if an Iranian person also funded a certain media platform. It will harm them, yes, because of the lack of freedom of speech in Iran, yet it will also show them a bigger reason of why they should uprise against their governments. Thank you.
Okay, is there one more question for the side from the audience? Itai, I see you have your hand up. Itai, did you want to ask a question to the side? Because we can only take a question for the side right now.
Yes, I had problems with the connection. What was the question?
Did you want to ask a question? Because we can take one question for the side.
Yes. That couldn't be a question in general. You can answer that as you wish. It's for the both sides. Thanks for letting me ask that. Now the question is, do you think you can build some kind of sanctions that most citizens agree with, and what those sanctions will be for both?
Okay, so
Okay.
because of limited time, we're going to keep this question just to the side since you got fewer questions.
Yeah, sure.
So the side, please, what kind of
Okay,
sanctions
Yoat,
do
you can go first.
Yeah, just
Thank you.
specify what kind of sanctions do you think would be the best policy?
Okay, so I don't think that any of us have the ability to know what sanctions exactly would be the best sanctions, but I do think that there are sanctions that we know that we could work with, and they could actually work against the government. If it's diplomatic relations, stopping any diplomatic relations with the country, that will hurt the government itself. If it's not letting Iran buy stuff from different countries, so stopping international relations with many countries, that could hurt the government. So I think that the world should really think and maybe look at the EU sanctions, where they are actually targeting the government itself and its international relations, and anything that will target specifically the government as much as possible. So that I think is the best sanctions for the issue in Iran. Turner.
Can I follow that real quick? I'll just say thank you, and I'll have to leave you guys because I'm on a rush to another lesson. Thank you very much for everyone. Sorry for interacting.
Okay, because our time is limited, we're going to go straight to the closing remarks. So Yoad and Turner, one of you will start. You have 90 seconds. And immediately after, we're going to go to Oren and Zaina. It'll be 1-1-1-1. So just who's going first for the for side?
Okay,
Sure.
I'll go first. And so just to close up, I would like to say that yes, I'm 100% agree that sanctions are necessary to make the Iranian government comply with the proliferation law. And one reason for this, I mean, we have many reasons for this. One of them, as the opposing team suggests, is to make the people have an uprising against the government. And like, there's no way the people can have an uprising with the government if they don't find reason enough to do that. And we all know, we can all see the international community is doing their best to expose the Iranian government acts by exposing them through the media, since they are controlling their national media. The international media is doing everything to expose their nuclear deal and their devious act of harming civilians, like giving death threats to any Iranian who decide to speak against the government, and also to avoid the risk that they pose to other Middle Eastern countries. It is actually necessary because this is not only about the welfare of the people of Iran. This is like a global issue, because if Iran acquire this nuclear weapon, it's going to harm a lot of people out of Iran. So that's the reason why sanctions are absolutely necessary to make sure that the government, and if the government cares about the country, the welfare of the country, as you guys agreed, that they have a lot of money in reserve, both government officials and the Reserve Bank. If that's what they care for, they can use it for the economy. But since they just want to go against the international law, I think the sanctions are necessary.
Thank you. Against?
Yes, so I believe that sanctions will not force Iran to comply, since Iran already has in its reserves billions of dollars, and it will be ready to use them for their own sake. It will not use them for its citizens' sake, and if it will just want to build a nuclear weapon, it has the money to do so, even though sanctions are put on it, and even if not, it is still able to do so. It just doesn't use its money to support its citizens. That's everything. The sanctions that are put on Iran are coming in favor of the country. They are using the sanctions to show the world that they are not the ones responsible for their oppressive citizens. The sanctions that are put on Iran will not help change the regime or make it any better. The sanctions are just oppressive the citizens even more, and more extreme measures, an actual method that will help to change the regime, meaning helping the citizens themselves rise up without putting sanctions on Iran, since sanctions will not help the citizens understand that the regime is terrible. They already understand that. And I do not believe that sanctions will help them further understand how terrible their own oppressive regime against them is.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Yoad?
Um, the sanctions on Iran are not only stopping Iran from getting advanced weapons, they are also stopping Iran from financing terror. They're putting it into they're minimizing it. They're helping the people of Iran to understand and to see what their government is actually doing. The people who flee Iran get a chance to actually talk to leaders, to say what they're going through in Iran, what the people are suffering. These sanctions are for the people. These sanctions are going to say, look, the world is on your side. We're trying to put the maximum pressure on your government to stop being against you and start helping you get a better life for yourself and for your future um, generations. It is very important to stop terror financing in Iran, because Iran is one of the biggest countries who are financing terror worldwide and are making a world a chaotic mess in many times.
And
Um,
Zaina, closing remarks?
yeah, don't be the reason. Don't be a reason for the Iranian government to show their people that the international community is actually the one that is doing the harm. Be someone that is going to point out that the Iranian, like the U.S. whatever country that that wants sanctions to be held on Iran, be the reason, be the finger that is pointing on the Iranian government. Expose them without interfering with their sovereignty, without starving the people. Fund their free speech groups. That's all you can actually do if you want a very true uprising that is going to make a definite change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the debaters. Great job. Round of applause. Judges, are we still deliberating?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay, so we're going to take a couple minutes for the judges. In the meantime, we will open it up to the audience, but first I want to thank you guys again, Cherner, Zaina, Yoad, Oren, for agreeing to the debate, for researching. Great job, very interesting. And I want to hear from you guys first how it was for you, and then we'll go to the audience. And when the judges are ready, they'll let me know.
So actually being able in quarantine to find something that will keep me entertained, and we all know how it is staying stuck at home. So actually being able to get out to speak, to talk about a very interesting thing that is happening right now, I think it's one of the most important things that we can do, and talking about it and understanding really the problem is something that will help us as, I would say, people who will think outside the box many times. It gives us a chance to really debate the issue, to look at other points of view on the issue. And I think that really understanding and accepting the fact that there are many ways to look at that issue is very important. So I think that the fact that we were able to talk in a good manner and understand what is going on is very important. I'm happy we got the chance to do that.
Oren, Cherner, Zaina, how was it for you guys? And you can tell us what your real opinion is, if you would be for or against if you choose.
Okay, for me, like
Yes.
I just wanted to try this out because I've only been to some MUN conferences. So I thought it was gonna be totally different. Yes, it is, but it's the same experience, you know, where you get to say your opinion on anything you want. And I also like study with people from different conflict zones. So it was actually interesting for me to debate about a country from someone else's country that I never knew much about what's going on there. But because of this, I went through a research and find out what's happening there. And it's actually interesting to know about this. And so, yeah, to also keep me from being bored in this quarantine that we have right now. Yes, it's both for fun and for personal development and to share experiences with different people.
And do you agree with your position? Are you actually in favor, or would you be against if you had to choose?
Realistically, I'm in favor of direct sanctions on the Iranian government, the top officials, because they are the horrible ones, not the entire Iran. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with my position that those top leaders should be dealt with because yeah, they are not showing any sign of humanity towards their own people. So I stand firm on that.
Okay. And Zaina, Oren?
Yes. So it is not a secret that I always cared about what's going on in Iran. Since I am Persian, I know the Persian language. I grew in a Persian house, and I always really cared about everything that is going on in Iran. And actually, before I started researching on this topic, I just wanted everything bad to happen to the government of Iran. And if it even dependent on sanctioning it. I said, sure, we should sanction Iran, we should attack Iran as strong as we possibly can to end it. But after actually researching the issue and understanding what the sanction caused in Iran, I understood that sanctioning Iran is actually sanctioning the citizens. The Iranian government is not affected from the sanctioning. And if we really want to solve this issue in Iran, we need to take down the government as soon as possible and to make Iran great again.
Zaina?
Oh, well, personally, I'm against interfering with any country's sovereignty. And when it comes to that subject, I'm strongly opinionated. Yet, I personally, yes, I do think that the Iranian government should be removed as soon as possible. And but yet the sanctions, as my fellow debater Oren said, you're sanctioning the people, not the government, because they have the ability to survive while the people do not have that ability. So you want a more inside, it's going to be chaotic no matter what if you want to remove the government. Yet you want it to come from the inside, not from like an international interfere. That's it.
All right, thanks, guys. The judges are ready. We're going to first hear feedback from any judges that want to give direct feedback, and then we'll announce the final decision. It was a split decision, but we have a majority. So if any of the judges just want to share their feedback on the debate.
So I'd like to thank Oren, Yoad, Cherno, and Zaina. I really enjoyed this debate. Thank you very much, Oren, for sharing your personal story. Cherno, I'm very impressed by your research, as all of you, Zaina and Yoad too, and I really thank you very, very much. It was very enjoyable and very informative.
Yeah, I guess I can go next. Just like Sharmi, I was extremely impressed by all the debaters. It was clear that people did a lot of work on their research, putting their arguments together on both sides, and it's really quite a pleasure to listen to. As Sharnor says, here we are all sitting at home being bored, and it's what a nice way to make a day more interesting to listen to some intelligent young people debate the pressing issues of our time. For which there's no easy answer. I can say that working at the embassy, we talk about this stuff ourselves all the time, and we don't have any easy answers either. Yeah, great job, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, I can speak quickly. First of all, Peter, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. I hope this will be a first of many more. These debates are really amazing, in my opinion. Steve does an incredible job of bringing students from all over the country and even other areas together. And just by listening to all of you, Zaina, I was extremely impressed by your arguments, your passion, your personal feelings came out in your arguments. And I always find passion an impressive, way to put an argument forward. Cherno, we could see that you had researched very well, extremely well, and you're very well versed, and it came across very impressively. And as well as Ohad and Oran and Yoad. Really, thank you very much. It was, as Peter said, on a day when everybody's sort of locked in. It's always great to make contact with those around you and to hear what young people are thinking. And I think sometimes when you listen to these young arguments, they make a lot of sense, and we should listen maybe a little bit harder to some of you. So thank you very much. I hope that the embassy will continue to support your debates and your get-togethers with diplomats and with embassy speakers. We'll be more than happy to bring people to you through through Zoom or otherwise. I'll be working with Steve. And thank you very much for allowing us to listen to the four of you this afternoon. It was really impressive. Thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much, U.S. Embassy and Stephen, for Debate for Peace. The work you're doing and the work that you support just is incredible. It's a great pleasure to be a part of. So thank you. To the debaters, wow, that was just such a pleasure to listen to the creative avenues. I feel that I had you split right down the middle, relating to the 4 categories really quickly. The preparation and research, I had your ads references of research from history right through to referencing protests that happened a month ago. That kind of extensive research was incredible and impressive, as well as Chernos, as was mentioned. I had the against side just ahead in research as well, because I think that the preparation and research is impressive to bring, but what's challenging in a debate is to draw the direct links between the research done and the compelling argument. For me, against had just one-upped on that. With creativity, firstly, Zaina, one of the most creative moments of the debate for me was when you'd raised your hand, obviously with something to say, and someone else had jumped in. You just turned it into a dance move, and that was that was super creative and very refreshing. But also, I think Cherno with I mean, look at where you're sitting. I look at your screen and I have you up as you're speaking, and you just look in a creative space. There's research that's been done and you're surrounded by knowledge. So that was a creative framing for me. So really, really commendable on that. Teamwork, I think also the alley-oop from responding to questions, show your ability to lead questions together with your item and say, can I answer that? And then throw it over. That kind of alley-oop from one part to the other in the teamwork was evident. And lastly, persuasiveness. I agree with Shami as well that Oren, bringing a personal touch is everything, and Zaina as well. Deeply, deeply personal experiences that just, you know, that have a tremendously persuasive impact. So I had you really, both teams split on different categories. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the final response is. But what I can say is, wow, what a pleasure. Great pleasure to watch. And I think also the debate's not, just to be specific, it wasn't about whether Iran needs to be stopped. And I think that the nuance of the debate topic as to whether the sanctions are the best way, there's something built into the debate topic, which is comparative. It's a comparative term. The best way means better than any other way. And I think that for me, got one side edged out over the other, but we'll see.
Thank you so much to the judges. And I'll announce the winner based on the majority vote, but please don't leave. I know there were more questions from the audience, so Adi will be next. Please feel free, Adi, after I announce the winner, please feel free to just unmute yourself, ask your question, and don't feel like the question is reserved just for the 4 debaters. Anyone who wants to respond can share their thoughts as well. So based on the majority of the votes we had, the 4 side, Cherner and Yoad, won the debate. Good job, guys. And well, we don't have we have a next debate topic, but we don't have the date and time scheduled yet, so we'll announce that. But tomorrow too, we're gonna have Zoom with the diplomat with the director of the American Center, Lisa Wishman. And Adi, you can please go ahead and ask your question.
I'm not sure if it's really relevant, but it's a kind of a 2-part question. How can the Iranian people, with the help of international community, in a way, how can the Iranian people, with the help of their international community, overthrow the government in a way that won't damage the desired freedom and democracy? And let's say they do manage to overthrow the government. How can they guarantee that the new government won't fall into the influence of terror organizations nor become a puppet state?
If it's possible, I would like to answer that. In the current world that we live in, we don't know what is actually happening. And the biggest thing that we can rely on is actually being able to speak our own mind. So once citizen is able to say what they believe in and not being threatened by its own government or by different people for having different opinions is one of the most important things in really being able to trust in some way or another your government. So yeah, the government that when the government in Iran will change. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The people are angry, the world is angry. The leaders there, they are old, they are really close-minded. So a lot of people, even inside the government, are getting slowly, but they are getting angry with them. So that is something that we should consider. But the best thing to do is really be able to make sure that the people all around the world are able to say what they feel about their own government and what they feel inside their countries without being threatened in any way possible. That's my opinion.
And
Thank you.
and Peter, I don't know if you saw the question, but do you mind just?
Oh, sure. So yeah, I guess I didn't